So I want to begin with explaining this concept of fear. Because fear is, as Pavel Durov, the CEO of Telegram, explained, one of the two main enemies of freedom: fear and greed. And I really need to analyze my own fear because that's where I came from. Going to college at Occidental, a liberal arts college where Obama formerly went to in 2016 to 2020 in the social sciences, I need to kind of analyze this in almost a therapeutic sense because the I mean to throw these words out there, the depression, the anxiety is something worth discussing because maybe there's other people who are not even free market thinking, but basically if you're not a hardcore leftist, you're basically a conservative at these liberal arts colleges. And that's kind of what I want to discuss. Because it felt like a fight or flight, a survival mode of operation, of living at Occidental College in some sense. Obviously, I had some friends and some good times, but this way of life, of interaction, that's basically what I'm trying to say. Is I'm trying to explain this. So okay, I went to Occidental College in 2016 in the fall. The first semester I was there, I took 4 classes on critical theory, social justice, sociology, Spanish cultural class. I'm getting distracted a little bit with these notifications. I gotta calm them down. Okay, we don't need to deal with that right now. Basically, these classes were anti-capitalistic, simply. But we were basically discussing, the title of the class, the course, the semester, these 4 interconnected classes, was California Immigration Semester. I later found out that one of these professors was a Maoist, maybe 2 of them, maybe 3 of them. And it was just 3 professors, and they shared the 4th class together teaching. And it was just like the same me and other 15 students for all 4 classes for this whole semester. And we're all first year students at Occidental, and we're trying to find our way. We hang out because we're like the first people we meet. But the core of the content is just anti-capitalistic leftism of how white men exploit minorities, Mexicans who came into labor in the 20th century, indigenous people. And to some extent, I learned some interesting ideas, but at the same time, it was just anti-capitalism, verbatim. Capitalism is the problem of what's creating inequality, injustice in society. Capitalism is the problem. And what I really want to discuss is capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system. It's capital. It's this idea of product that is able to be used for the production of not just consumer goods, but producer goods. I'm in my apartment. I'm in my room. I'm using a mic. I'm using a laptop. I'm using a camera to talk to people around the world. This all requires capital. Capital, as F.A. Harper said, the use of capital structures is the highest form of charity one can do. And Jeffrey Tucker has a great article and a great lecture with the Acton Institute called Capitalism is About Love. And so when we compare capitalism and socialism, what is socialism? As Marx defined, or communism, is the public ownership of the means of production. In other words, public ownership of capital. Instead of private owners, capitalism being defined as private ownership of the means of production or private ownership of capital, it's property, it's material for use, even like human capital. All these things are necessarily property, and all property has to be owned at one point by people, whether it's by one person or a group of people. Even this idea of public ownership is still property that's collectively owned. So basically, my time at Occidental, other than being with Professor Darren Jurgen and studying free market economics, I had a Spanish professor who was like giving us a wink and a nod about the real reason why we're at Occidental in this liberal arts college. It's because it was to study communism, to study socialism, to become anti-capitalistic. And in some regard, yeah, that's what most people become when they study in college, is anti-capitalistic. But then you have other people like me who go on to study capitalism, who go on to study socialism, studying the social sciences. And if I can like sum up the arguments of Jeffrey Tucker's article and lecture on Capitalism is About Love, it's this idea that, to use C.S. Lewis's conception of the 4 types of love, that only in the market, when people come together, think of the naked ape, the primitive man. He enters society to benefit himself, but he enters society by producing something and trading it with people to benefit other people. Other people make something, they trade something to benefit themselves. Not this equality of value, but this disequality of value. People are trading. And only in this marketplace where commerce can develop can people begin to validate other people, that they are providing goods and services to me and to others. And this form of validation is foundational for affection, for friendship. This interpersonal love is what comes about from this market process of interpersonal exchange. Before that, if it's just war and exploitation, then you have people conquering people enslaving other people. And this idea of socialism is this idea that's true pessimism, that we can't let people be left to the anarchy of production, of the market process. They have to be controlled and ordered what to do. That's why these terms, these Orwellian doublespeak terms, is that taxation and slavery is freedom. It's only when society is compelled to work that man's nature will evolve into the new socialist man who will work for the good of the society, for the good of the collective, for the public. And it's not true. It's the machine that's broken, not people. Human nature is human nature. People are self-interested. They prefer things in the present more in the future, all else equal. People would rather leisure than labor. But we need to labor. Well, at the present time, until we can develop, more technologies and improvements and ways to be productive, so that we don't have to sweat and labor for our next meal. But what saved people from this form of conquest, exploitation, and slavery is capitalism, is this idea of savings, of invested capital, of increasing productivity and more complex structures of production, so that people can become more wealthy. Not just money. Money's not wealth, but materially wealthy. And material wealth is not happiness. Material wealth is not love. But with material wealth, we leave these primitive states of affairs, of just trying to create structures for stability, literal structures of like shelter, of clothing, of food. We have food. We have shelters. So that's no longer the issue that we're struggling to obtain. What we're struggling to obtain is love. People don't feel love. People feel apathetic. And they're looking at this current system and they're saying this is the fault of capitalism. Capitalism is making people have to sacrifice their creativity, their humanity, their community, their love for the machine, for the corporate machine. But this is not capitalism. This is cronyism. This is interventionism. This is distortionism, destructionism. This is the in-between system between capitalism and socialism. But this system is leading step by step to socialism. So you'll see this term online, late stage capitalism, and they think this is a Marxist idea of these stages of society. One, you can't predict the future, but two, this is not capitalism. What we're going towards is socialism. We're losing freedoms. We have socialized money. We have a quasi-socialized society. So this is what's producing this spiritual sickness. It's not capitalism. Capitalism, capital accumulation, allows for love. Capitalism is not what's, making people starve. In fact, it's the reverse. We have too much food. But then the food, through all these regulations and corporate profiteering, where the profiteering is disconnected from the actual service, but more so from lobbying, from the state rules and laws, insulating certain corporations to exist without this threat of other companies coming in, that they're able to make lesser quality products. They become like oligopolies. And that's where you have these like sicknesses, these chemicals, these cheap manufactured products. And so it's these socialists and these universities that I believe are the true cynics. They don't believe in people. They think that they're the scientific class. I mean, this is the structure of FDR of almost 100 years ago, of the experts ruling society. And they think that they have to not only train the next rulers, but be the rulers of society. The expert class, telling people which ways to go. Which orders to follow? No one is able to be validated in this socialist society as a slave. You cannot be validated because it's not your choice of what you do. You're following orders. And you're avoiding tortures. You're avoiding threats. What validation? What spiritual ideas are you pursuing? This is the idea of like eros, this love is the entrepreneurial spirit. He has an idea, he wants to bring it to life. He might sacrifice everything for love of bringing something into this world, even if it costs him everything. He might just be crazy enough to do it because he believes he can make this world better. That's a form of love. That's what entrepreneurs are trying to do. And they're trying to please consumers. The consumers don't have to love entrepreneurs. It's almost an asymmetrical love. But they can validate entrepreneurs and businessmen with either consuming their product in the form of a purchase or abstaining to consume a product in the form of a non-purchase. And these become signals to the entrepreneur of how can I create something better quality or cheaper costs, competitive pricing. There's a story from Michael Malice about the Soviet Union where, obviously, it's one party. And you can't be an enemy to the party. We're all in this system together. If you're an enemy to the party, you get sent to Siberia. You get sent to the gulags. There's no room for these exploitative bourgeoisies, let alone anarchists. So the people, who were quote unquote enemies of the party, middle of the night, get arrested. Let's say it's a man, a husband, a father. Now they go to the wife and they consider, why are you married to an enemy of the party? So the wife gets arrested. And if they have children, now you have an orphan overnight. And the neighbors, the friends, can't take in the child because then the Stasi would go to these people and be like, why are you taking in the child of the enemy of the party? So then you have an epidemic of orphans in these socialist countries. Not only were they orphans, they lost their family, they lost their home. So you had an epidemic of kids committing suicide in the Soviet Union. What love, what validation, what freedom do you have under socialism? You have apathy. That's why people become cynical. You lose property. Socialism is the abolition of private property. Not just on what you own materially, but on yourself. It's a form of public slavery. So then what do people sell when they have nothing to sell? They sell their bodies. That's why you have more prostitution. 13-year-old girls arrested in the Soviet Union, selling themselves. What do we have today as we're going step by step to more socialism? More inflation. This is just a policy. The politicians are implementing these policies step by step to socialism. Well, with the digital age, you have this form of prostitution, OnlyFans, pornography. People become apathetic. They don't care. They feel like they have nothing to lose. Socialism isn't about love. It's about power. It's about control. you have no choice to love. You're forced to love. This is like, what is it when you're forced to do something or you're forced to love something against your will? It's not love. And my time at Occidental, I was like in this survival mode of being like shut down. I couldn't have conversations with my professors. They're all socialists, yet they know nothing about the Soviet Union. They know nothing about this history of freedom and what it means to lose freedom. And I was just scared to talk to these professors because, like, they're going to say, oh, who are you? You know, what do you know? But it's so fucking stupid. It's literally just this religion of, it's not even science, but they'll say it's science. It's just dogma. What is science? Real science is using deductive methodology to find truth. The empirical method of science, you can never know anything for certain. We just use a theory, a hypothesis to check history, to check data, and we can either falsify or verify a claim, but we can't say that this hypothesis is indefinitely valid universally. But the professors were good in the sense that they were good at imposing fear on their students, imposing fear on me, just trying to survive and manage. Get like, I mean, I'm like 19, 20 years old, 21 at this time throughout college. You know, I don't have solid ideas of principles and arguments, but I had questions, and they don't even want to entertain the questions because they can't. And so everything just became intimidation, became just fear mongering, and just like ad hominems of like, well, I mean, you come from a privileged background, so like, of course you can't understand this. You're part of the problem. This has nothing to do with ideas, with science. It has everything to do with compliance and indoctrination. That's why this show is called The Thinking Market. Because I want to think again. There's no thinking in these liberal arts colleges today. It's too expensive and the quality is shit. It's going down. This model's unsustainable. Yeah. I think that's about all I want to really discuss today. Hopefully we'll get more comments and chats to discuss. Please leave comments, leave questions, leave chats. Give me a follow or subscribe if you like. But we're going to get some more ideas going. We're going to start thinking again. So, thank you very much. Peace.